Ladies and gentlemen, show your appreciation, please, for Dominique Samuels.
Hello, everyone. It's absolutely amazing to see everybody here in my hometown of Manchester. I love seeing politics being brought to the north, and I feel incredibly privileged to have the opportunity to speak to you all today. So thank you, Richard Tice, and everybody within Reform. So for those who don't have a clue who I am, I'm Dominique Samuels. I'm 22 years old and a political commentator and writer. Some of you may know me from Twitter or the debates I have on TV and radio. Shout out to news outlets like GB News and Talk Radio that actually allow for diversity of opinion. I've recently finished a degree in politics with international relations at the University of York, which I'm very grateful to have completed, considering what these past 2 years have been like, which I'll talk more about in a minute. Now, what's odd for someone my age is firstly that I'm interested in politics, but secondly, what's apparently even more odd for someone my age, gender and complexion is that I'm not rabidly left-wing, as some would wrongly assume. I guess I'm a bit of a weirdo in this sense, though I've had worse names thrown at me, I won't bother to repeat them here. So as you've probably guessed by now, I'm certainly not enticed by the likes of Extinction Rebellion, Black Lives Matter, and other fringe far-left movements. I'm not interested in identity politics or manufactured outrage. That's largely why I despair at large parts of our media that no longer seem to have the best interests of the people at heart, but seem more interested in what can generate headlines. It's why I despair at the Labour Party that seems to have gone so far down the woke rabbit hole that they no longer know how to define a woman. For me, I am far more interested in truth, common sense, and freedom. I'm interested in what's best for Britain. And although I would happily describe myself as conservative with a small c in my values and what I stand for, I also cannot stand the Conservative Party. It's become ever more apparent that the Conservatives seem hell-bent on destroying the fabric of our society and resemble the Chinese Communist Party more and more as the years go by. The reports of 3 Labour MPs considering defecting to the Tories tells you all you need to know. There is nothing conservative about destroying the country with ideological lockdowns and restrictions, more tax and a green agenda with revolutionary consequences that are not being transparently shared with the British public. But as a young person and a former student, I must speak to the way this government, our unions and our universities have held young people in complete contempt over the past 2 years. They shut the schools, with unions clamouring for more closures, despite missing school being more damaging than catching COVID-19 itself for young children, and are continuing to needlessly test healthy children for the virus, disrupting their education. Various studies show that academic progress and the mental health of our young people has been set back significantly, with the most recent research showing that 80% of children and adolescents suffered potentially severe and long-term mental health issues as a result of lockdowns and COVID-19. But sadly, our unions and teachers and some in our media have seemed far more concerned about educating kids on white privilege, the climate crisis, and terrifying them into believing that shutting down their school is for their health. And our universities are no better. I officially finished in May, and I know firsthand what a terrible deal students have had. Universities have had students essentially participating in an open university course, resigning us to online lectures, far lower in quality, whilst charging us full price and refusing to listen to our concerns. One university was ordered to pay an international medical student $5,000 because of a less viable learning experience. But why isn't more being demanded of our universities by our government? Why did Gavin Williamson say he would back the Office for Students in pursuing universities that are delivering a substandard service, despite the regulator having no powers to do so and the Department of Education having no plans to change the law to give such powers? It's absolutely ridiculous. We'll have to see if former vaccines minister and serial liar Nadeem Zahawi will be any better, but I don't hold out much hope. And yes, I know students are annoying with our wokery, and of course we make the choice to go to university. But to be promising students a return to normal, to be luring us back to our accommodation and then leaving us in the lurch with £1 billion wasted on unused accommodation so far, is simply cruel and demonstrates universities no longer operate with providing an efficient service at the forefront of their agendas. The government knows this, yet does nothing, and all of the other parties are abysmal on this as well. A few stern words, but no action is what we've become used to. Just look at the migrant boat crisis, for example. Even now, universities are still refusing to do in-person teaching, refusing to end online lessons, despite warnings from reports that a lack of social interaction and Zoom fatigue could increase university dropout rates, with poorer students being worse affected. Insultingly, Steve West, the new president of Universities UK, claimed that a blend of online and in-person teaching was always the plan and that it was merely accelerated by the pandemic. Well, it would have been nice, Steve, to let everybody know about this grand plan. And I'm not surprised that university leaders haven't felt a shred of guilt for ripping students off in this way, when they've been getting pay rises while the rest of us suffer. In July 2020, half of our top universities gave their leaders a bumper pay package last year, which saw the average total pay for a vice-chancellor rise by £8,000, all while students were caged on campus and forced to learn through a screen. To pour further salt into the wound, the minute young people actually went out and enjoyed themselves, the government threatened vaccine passports for nightclubs, threatening businesses with making them mandatory if they don't do this voluntarily. And despite them not being formally put in place, there are reports from various universities that students are being forced to present COVID passes to enter freshers' events and union nights out. In Bath and Sheffield, young people are being told to wear wristbands signifying their vaccination status, with vaccinated students being able to be in separate queues and enter clubs quicker on the basis of private medical information. Despite them being able to pass and catch on the virus at similar rates to that of an unvaccinated person. Cambridge and 2 Oxford colleges have demanded that students reveal their COVID vaccination status to staff. And Hartbury College in Gloucester, for example, has become the first university to ban unvaccinated students from living on site. There's been flip-flop after flip-flop on this, but the government is refusing to back down on its draconian vaccine passport scheme, now being sold as a plan B for autumn and winter. Ironically, taking one look at the government's supposed public consultation on this, it's likely vaccine passports will be here eventually, whether we like it or not. This is despite Nadeem Zahawi lambasting vaccine passes as discriminatory and advising businesses not to use them, despite a parliamentary report stating that vaccine passports are unscientific and discriminatory. The only purpose for such an illiberal scheme is control and coercion, targeting an age group that is virtually at zero risk from COVID and is most likely out of any age cohort to have natural immunity to coronavirus. Now, of course, COVID is a serious disease, but the average COVID death age is 83, so therefore necessary and proportionate measures should be taken to stop the spread. And I'm also very aware that young people like to party. But vaccine passports for nightclubs are not a scientific measure. It's simply draconian, authoritarian, and disproportionate. Just what have we become? Just what have we become as a country under the Tories? We've become a country that is fed a daily diet of fear, division, and an all-round lack of common sense. 82% of over 16s have had both doses of the vaccine. 93 to 98% of UK adults have COVID antibodies. Ministers have now confirmed the infection fatality rate of COVID-19 is now comparable to flu. The passport scheme's launch in Scotland has been a disaster. So why are we ripping off students in the name of COVID? Why are we further disenfranchising an age group that's already been hit the hardest by unemployment over the past year, encouraging nightclubs and universities to discriminate on the basis of vaccination status, and demanding that parents vaccinate their healthy children as young as 12 in order to protect adults? It's a disgrace. Thankfully, Reform has been the only party that has consistently held the government to account and actually stood up for students, despite our Corbyn mania. By calling for a 30% discount on tuition and halls of resident fees, Reform have spoken up for students when many parties haven't bothered. And though our political system is far from perfect, making it harder for newer parties to break through, Reform is a party of conscience and common sense. And I believe it is of the utmost importance that we stop voting for the least worst option between Labour and the Conservatives. Please. Because that is not democracy. It's time for our mainstream parties to be seriously challenged for the sake of our freedom, future, and what we want to look like as a society in the years to come. Thank you.